Hello, good morning, and welcome to News Central Now. My name is Mazino. The headlines this morning. Nigeria governors assure labor of better remuneration as consultations for new minimum wage continues. Guinean court to issue verdict on former dictator Daddy Camara's massacre trial on July 31st. And leading Congo rights group express concern over rise in torture cases. Now, in the news, President Bola Tinubu will address the new national minimum wage with state governors at the 142nd meeting of the National Economic Council (NEC) today at ASUU Rock Villa in Abuja. The president's chief of staff, Femi Gbajabiamila, announced this unusual appearance while speaking in Kano, where he led a high-power delegation to express condolences to Vice President Kashim Shettima on the passing of his mother-in-law. Delivering the president's condolence message, Gbajabiamila revealed that President Tinubu would be attending the NEC meeting, describing this attendance as unprecedented. This meeting follows the Federal Executive Council's decision on Tuesday to defer the report of the Tripartite Committee on the new minimum wage. The deferral was to allow President Tinubu to conduct further consultations with stakeholders on the matter. In the meantime, the Nigeria Governors Forum (NGF) has reassured Nigerians and organized labor that ongoing negotiations will result in a better minimum wage. This follows the governor's initial rejection of the federal government's proposal of 62,000 naira, citing concerns that some states would need to borrow funds to meet the proposed salaries. An emergency meeting was convened by the governors after the Federal Executive Council postponed the minimum wage discussion on Tuesday to allow President Bola Tinubu to conduct broader consultations. In a communique released after the emergency meeting, which extended into the early hours of Thursday, NGF Acting Director of Media Ahmed Salihu stated that the forum discussed various national issues, including the new national minimum wage. The communique emphasized the forum's commitment to continued engagement with key stakeholders to reach a mutually acceptable solution. And the federal government and the Academic Staff Union of Universities held a crucial meeting on Wednesday in an effort to prevent a potential strike by the union. The discussion took place at the Minister of Education's office in Abuja, starting around 4:30 p.m. and concluding at approximately 6:40 p.m. ASUU President Professor Emmanuel Osodeke addressed journalists after the meeting, emphasizing its necessity. He pointed out that the current administration had been in office for a year without addressing crucial issues affecting the university system. Both sides expressed optimism that the initiation of negotiations would lead to the amicable resolution of all outstanding issues. Osodeke mentioned that both parties agreed to establish committees to examine the 10 demands ASUU outlined in a letter to the federal government on Monday. A follow-up meeting is scheduled in 2 weeks for further review. Now, after months of evading the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, former governor of Kogi State, Alhaji Yahaya Bello, is set to appear before the Federal High Court in Abuja today. Following a series of events surrounding his attempted arrest by EFCC operatives, Bello finally agreed to present himself in court at the last adjourned date. Bello's lead counsel, Abdul Wahab Mohammed, assured Justice Emeka Nwete on May 10th that the former governor would appear in court. This assurance came shortly after the court rejected the defendant's request for his suspension of the trial. Mohammed explained that while Bello is not afraid of arraignment, he has concerns for his safety in Abuja, citing consistent threats to his life as the reason for his previous evasion. And the former governor of Kaduna State, Nasir ElRufai, has filed a defamation lawsuit against the Kaduna State Assembly on Wednesday at the Federal High Court in Kaduna. ElRufai demanded a public apology from the lawmakers who published reports that claims to defame him and his cabinet on the alleged misappropriation of over 423 billion naira during his 8 years administration. ElRufai's legal team argued that the report is both false and malicious, designed to tarnish his reputation and discredit his administration's achievements, asserting that the allegations have caused significant harm to his personal and professional life. The former governor stated his developmental policies were efforts to improve infrastructure and education in Kaduna State. He maintains that the Assembly's allegations are politically motivated and lack any substantive evidence. Earlier legal practitioner Tunji Abdul Hamid was with us on the news and shared his thoughts on this.
Evidence that money or loans obtained during his administration were not used for the purpose, and they can substantiate the allegation. They have the opportunity, they have the right to take prosecute him in court, and which is, I think, one of the recommendations of the committee set up by the House of Assembly was that Mr. ElRufai and other alleged people should be prosecuted in court for those for misappropriation. So, but it's not it's not automatic. The burden is on those who allege must prove. That is our standard of proof in Nigeria. If you are alleging me of corruption, if you are alleging me of any criminal activities or whatever, the burden is on you to establish that allegation. So Mr. ElRufai need not even say anything. If you are not able to prove your case beyond reasonable doubt, then that case will go. So the House of Assembly, the state or whoever wants to allege that Mr. ElRufai and his administration has misappropriated 423 billion naira must bring evidence before the court to establish that position.
Federal government launches Nonkinetic initiative called the Polaku Resettlement Initiative aimed at combating insecurity and restoring peace back to the Northwest region. The Vice President of Nigeria made this known at the recently concluded Northwest Peace and Security Summit, which held in Katsina State, saying that about 51 billion naira has already been secured for initiatives aimed at returning peace to the troubled region. Amadin Uyi reports.
The recent summit, which held in Katsina State, had in attendance all state governors from the Northwest region, including Nigeria's former president, Muhammadu Buhari. The vice president of the country, who was representing President Bola Tinubu, says that the Northwest Peace and Security Summit, with a team in regional cooperation for securing lives and livelihoods in Northwest Nigeria, was organized to address security challenges affecting the Northwest region.
Our presence here is a communal gathering to address the afflictions that have threatened the stability and unity of this great house. I am honored to join you in reflecting on our path to extinguishing the fires we were elected to put out. The issue of national security in the Northwest is not a sectional agenda. We promise to make Nigeria safer, and this aim has been our topmost priority since we came to office over a year ago.
He says that efforts which have been put in place to combat insecurity have largely been successful, but called on all stakeholders to partner with government.
Through enhanced border security and intelligence capabilities, we have disrupted and dismantled criminal networks. Each of you here is aware of the high-profile figureheads of these groups neutralized by our forces. And I am here to share with you that this is just the beginning. We must also reverse the institutional priorities governing security and the economic dysfunctions that create vulnerabilities to crime. We must also counter the ideological mischief that has pervaded the discourse of peace and security in the region.
He also adds that the federal government has launched an initiative called the Polaku Resettlement Initiative, aimed at representing its non-kinetic intervention with the focus of tackling violent extremism and insecurity in the Northwest region.
It is a timely solution to address some of the root causes of disputes and insecurity in the Northwest. Our choice of Sokoto, Kebbi, Katsina, Zamfara, and Kaduna states, and by including Benue and Niger State for inclusivity for the pilot phase, is strategically planned to create positive nationwide transformations. The comprehensive plan includes building residencies, roads, schools, and essential facilities, fulfilling our pledge to the nation.
The Vice President assured that government will continue to review its strategies as part of efforts to improve insecurity and ensure that peace returns to the Northwest.
Abia State government says it has reduced the operational time of tricycle operators in Abia State between 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Now, Now, this move, according to the Commissioner of Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs and Chairman Harmonized Task Force for Revenue Collection, Uzon Nwachukwu, is to check the rate of crimes perpetrated in the state using tricycles. This order will come into effect on July 1, 2024 in Umuahia and Abia. News Central's Chinwe Ogele reports that the new policy has also elicited reactions from the transporters and passengers alike.
For everyone in Umuahia or Abia who doesn't own a car, the tricycle, popularly known as keke, has been one effective transportation system that not only conveys people within the city, but also to neighboring communities. The time restrictions stipulated by the government, effective by July, will certainly affect commercial activities, the economic status, social and official programs of the people, and even the state.
There's a levy we normally pay daily. So, and some of them are riding under high purchase.
So, like we now, I'm a banker, sometimes we close around 8, sometimes around 9. So I don't expect when I finish closing around that type of time, I start trekking or I should sleep in the office. I don't know what to do now.
The Commissioner for Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs in the state, Uzon Nwachukwu, says the decision was reached with the support of the Keke union leaders to reduce the crime rate in the state.
People who have the means to be able to invest in commercial buses, big buses and all that, we're encouraged. But we will also not allow anybody to use this time to conduct his own criminal activities because you have buses or do kapu-kapu and you also be able to contribute to the criminality in the state.
If the assertion of the commissioner is anything to go by, why are vehicles still allowed on the roads by daytime and at night, even though they are also used to kidnap, rob, and commit other crimes?
And this law now government made is not going to favor us because some people travel far away and come back by that time. How can they not go to their house by 7 o'clock? You say people should stop. Now somebody that has some money that for transport, he will not double it because if Keke does not operate by that time, they will double the fare, and it's not good. Everybody is complaining. The society is bad. The economy is bad.
The bad ones are very few. The number of the good people outnumber the bad ones. So they shouldn't, because of the bad ones, say they want to restrict movement at that early hours of the day. Because when we talk of 6 p.m., 7 p.m. is still very early. People are still busy. Even some government workers are still there.
What becomes the fate of the people who close work late in the evening? What becomes the fate of the traders who also close from their shops and market late evening? The Keke operators themselves are asking the government to also rescind its decision and take the time forward to a time where they will be able to meet up their daily obligations. In Umuahia for News Central, Chinwe Ogele.
To health matters now. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control has placed Nigeria at high risk as it activates its emergency operating center following a cholera outbreak that has now claimed 53 lives. News Central's Ni Amoni completes the story.
The cholera outbreak in Nigeria poses a serious public health threat. Nigeria, with the largest population in Africa, is currently grappling with a cholera epidemic. According to the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, as of 24 June, 1,528 suspected cholera cases and 53 related deaths were recorded across 31 states and 107 local government areas, representing a case fatality rate of 3.5%.
It's not a figure that we need to be proud of, and I really believe that a lot can be done to keep that forward.
While the exact cause of the outbreak remains under investigation, Lagos State, which has reported the most cases, is probing various possibilities.
Street beverages are very common in Lagos, in Nigeria. It is what a lot of people consume on their way to and from work or after school. So it's not surprising that the number of a few of our suspected cases referred to the consumption of a liquid beverage.
So far, we've tested several, and we haven't got any positive results back on cholera. We're continuing to test, hoping that we can maybe identify a particular source, but as of now, we've not been able to do that.
In response to the worsening situation, the NCDC has activated its National Cholera Emergency Operations Center as the federal government reels out containment and treatment efforts.
When you look at the magnitude of the problem globally, the shortage of cholera vaccine is a global issue. We don't produce the cholera vaccine here, and it's not produced even in Africa. So before we get to that point, there's some basic things that we could do. Hand washing, better sanitation, hygiene practices, prompt treatment. And we have engaged the global actors who have access to those vaccines already to identify sources of those vaccines that we can use.
Data show that the outbreak may currently be under control. However, there is an urgent need to step up advocacy, encouraging the public to take greater responsibility for their hygiene and what they consume. Common environmental practices like open defecation, which is prevalent in Lagos, have been cited as likely contributing factors. In Lagos for News Central, Ni Omani.
Now, trado medical practitioners in Nigeria have expressed worry over the lack of support from government, saying this is affecting the growth of the sector. They made this known in the national capital Abuja during a visit to headquarters of the Nigeria Labour Congress. News Central's Joshua Imarai tells us more.
Members of the National Association of Herbal Medicine Employers, as they visited the Labour House in Abuja, they said their objective is to formalize with the Nigerian Labour Congress as one of its affiliates and to bring to the attention of the union the neglect of the traditional and alternative medical sector in the country.
We came to this Nigerian Labour Congress to come and register, to come and as it relates to the Labour Congress fully because of our work. Because of our work, our work is already going on far in the country, but they don't recognize us.
Herbal medicine in Nigeria, we are not valuing it. Now Nigeria is now seeing it that medical doctors, they are now going abroad to practice. And they are going out to practice outside the country. All the sick people here, what is their fate? So we are urging our able president, the Nigeria Labour Congress, to help us so that people in Nigeria, from the presidency to every arm of the government, to recognize us.
The president of the NLC, while acknowledging the affiliation to the union, says that there is a need for government to tap into the potentials available in the herbal and alternative medicine sector.
We understand the importance of herbal medicine in Nigeria. The NLC understands it. But it is still a virgin area that we need to explore, especially for a country like Nigeria, that the economy is not booming. The potency of herbal medicine is not in doubt. Whether it cures, yes. There are elements that you can't trace their genealogy to the English culture. It's rooted in the Nigerian culture, and it is here that we know the solution, because those sicknesses are indigenous of this place.
The association called for the establishment of a code of practice to standardize traditional medical practices in Nigeria to ensure a unified and professional approach to healthcare delivery. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarai.
We'll take a short break now, and when we come back, more news. Welcome back. Now, stakeholders in Nigeria have expressed concern over the proposed legislation to mandate extractive and non-extractive companies within the country making a minimum profit of about 30 million naira to face sanctions if they fail to carry out adequate corporate social responsibility projects in their host communities. This was as they appeared before a public hearing in the House of Representatives in Abuja in order to offer suggestions on the proposed bill expected to regulate corporate social responsibility activities in the country. Idang Joseph completes the report.
The attempt to regulate the corporate social responsibility of companies operating in Nigeria mandates the introduction of a corporate social responsibility bill at the National Assembly in 2017. The bill, expected to be the primary legislation on all corporate social responsibility activities, proposed to establish a commission which will be mandated to collect a tax of about 3.5% from the companies to execute projects in their host communities. This was, however, rejected by many.
Mr. Speaker, my distinguished colleague.
The bill, once again, was reintroduced in 2023 and has currently passed second reading.
Public hearing is part of our legislative process to engage the citizens in lawmaking, especially because the proposed law has impacts to make on the people.
Though corporate social responsibility is at the discretion of companies, lawmakers say the bill will detail the nature, scope, and responsibilities from the companies more clearly.
This will ensure a baseline for social responsibility while allowing companies to label their efforts to their specific circumstances.
Stakeholders, however, disagree with the position of lawmakers, who say the bill will help bridge infrastructure gap in the country. They say it is once again another form of taxing companies.
With the telecom industry, the service providers or the people that are providing businesses in that sector are complaining about more than 38 tax heads in different categories. So this one with the provision on something like tax will just add to that number of.
It is misplaced for non-compliance with CSR to be punishable by imprisonment.
While the debate over the effectiveness and the need for the bill still rages on, some stakeholders have expressed fear that the bill will discourage sustainable social programs by corporate organizations. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idong Joseph.
Now, environmental advocates in Nigeria have called for a more collective effort in tackling environmental challenges in the country. This was as they converged on the nation's capital in Abuja for a national dialogue to mark the 2024 World Desertification and Drought Day. News Central's Joshua Marai tells us more.
According to experts, environmental challenges poses a major problem to many economies, especially developing economies in Africa. As advocates gather here to mark the 2024 World Desertification and Drought Day, they say human activities have continued to impact the environment, causing harm to the planet, hence the need for better land management practices.
Globally, landscapes are degrading at an alarming rate, pushing million species towards extinction and mounting economic toll, including on the farming sector. Unsustainable practices, from the way we build cities, on the way we grow food, is harming our planet and our livelihoods, but paradoxically, also impeding our ability to feed the people.
As we gather here today, we must recognize that land is linked, that the health of our land is linked to the health of our economies, because land is needed for agriculture, we find mineral resources in it, it's connected to the livelihood of communities, and desertification and drought presents pressing challenges.
Stakeholders at this event say there is a need to restore areas hit by desertification and drought, revive damaged ecosystems, and promote sustainable land use.
The need to restore regions affected by desertification and drought is paramount. Achieving this requires robust sensitization and awareness campaigns alongside the enforcement of existing laws. NESRA is at the forefront of these efforts, operationalizing 34 national environmental regulations, including National Environmental Desertification Control and Drought Mitigation Regulation 2011.
They also urge Nigerians to adopt practices like tree planting to combat environmental degradation and promote a culture of sustainability. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarai.
On Wednesday, activists and civil society groups across the globe came together in solidarity with the communities of Uganda and Tanzania to protest against the East African crude oil pipeline project. The project, backed by Chinese investment, has been met with fierce resistance from local communities who fear it will displace them and destroy their way of life. In Nigeria, our correspondent Emmanuel Osodeke covered the protest by climate advocates at the Chinese embassy in Abuja, calling on the Chinese government to end its proposed plan to fund the East African crude oil pipeline project in Uganda and Tanzania.
The East African crude oil pipeline project is approximately 1,443 kilometers long and starts from the Hoima district in Uganda, terminating at the Tanga port in Tanzania. Due to worries about the project's possible effects on the environment and the lack of adequate compensation for displaced populations, the project is now in the eye of the storm as environmental advocates say they want it halted.
Climate justice. What do we want? Climate justice. The project's impact on biodiversity and the environment, especially water resources, will also impact the livelihood of wider population who rely on the tourism sector and fisheries. The fisheries sector in Uganda alone employs over 1.7 million people directly and 3.6 million people indirectly, with Lake Albert and Lake Victoria contributing to more than 80% of the country's total fish production.
Why keep investing in a project like ECOP that is going to put the lives of millions of people in jeopardy, exposing them to the effect of oil spill and the likes of others, taking away biodiversity and our sustainability at large? So I'm going to say this without ambiguity. Stop ECOP now.
All we are saying is stop ECOP. They say if your neighbor shouts and you refuse to come out, when you shout, no one will come out for you. And so we are here for Tanzania, Uganda, and Congo. But our message is simple. We're not here to fight. We are saying stop ECOP.
Climate advocates under the Stop ECOP coalition around the continent have called on financial institutions to distance themselves from the proposed pipeline. Some of them held a solidarity march at the Chinese embassy in Nigeria, calling on the Chinese government to end proposed plans to fund the project.
Funding a project that is estimated to lead to greenhouse gas emission of 379 million tons CO2 and bring serious stress to local livelihood is not the kind of climate or development partnership African people are asking for.
Chinese, please stop funding the project or stop signing whatever propaganda that's going to finance the ECOP project. We know that it's an investment for you, but there's an alternative. There are green solutions that can create jobs for the masses. Even the oil project that has been spanning across Nigeria and the South, the Niger Delta, only a few people are being employed. But if you think green and if you think sustainable, a lot of African youth will gain employment. But why ECOP? Why our lives? Why our farmland?
In a time where the world is moving away from fossil fuel and embracing renewable and sustainable energy, this civil society organization group gathered here at the Chinese embassy are calling for an end to the ECOP project. According to these groups, they are saying that this particular project will have a devastating effect on the life of the people of East Africa. Here in Abuja for News Central, Marvelous Oboman.
Also, News Central's Bongani Sisiba covered a similar protest at the Chinese embassy in South Africa.
As the ECOP project moves forward, concerns about its impact on the environment and local communities continues to grow across Africa. It was a tense and dramatic scene as both sides refused to back down. These protesters were met with a heavy-handed response from the police, who attempted to push them away from the Chinese embassy here in South Africa. But the crowd held firm, undeterred by the intimidation. Their message was clear: China, hands off our land.
The Chinese, through its various state-owned institutions and companies, are playing a vital role in the development of the East African crude oil pipeline project. This exploitative, extractive, neo-colonial violence of ECOP, making it a reality in Uganda and Tanzania, and further exacerbating not only the climate crisis on a global scale, but also the socio-economic harm that communities are already reeling from.
Despite the challenges, the protesters remained defiant, singing and dancing in defiance of the authorities, chanting songs that they would not be silenced.
We need to mobilize entire Africa as a whole so that they can understand our struggle or our grievances.
They say they are fighting for the rights of their fellow brothers and sisters in Uganda and Tanzania to live on their ancestral land, free from threats of displacement and environmental destruction.
This project it's not open for SMMEs in Uganda and Tanzania. It's only the government who has the share in that project, and then communities were never consulted. So that is a proof to say now communities won't benefit, because even the plans there is no anywhere in the social and labor plans of this project where it shows that people will benefit in this project by employment or by using this gas to develop themselves.
They also called on the authorities in Uganda to stop harassing and arresting environmental activists.
These activists who have been arrested in Uganda, it's unacceptable the way they've been treated. Some have been arrested recently just for protesting at the Chinese embassy. Activists were arrested last year. They spent months in jail, mistreated, tortured basically. It's just unacceptable.
Meanwhile, authorities at the embassy did not come out to receive the memorandum. However, these protesters, this is not their first time braving the elements and facing potential backlash, as they have similar visits before. However, their resolve remains unwavering. They have vowed to keep coming back until their voices are heard and their demands are met. At the Chinese embassy in Pretoria, for News Central, Wangani Siziba.
Coming up, Guinea court to issue verdict on Camara's massacre trial, and we'll bring you details after the break. Welcome back. Now, a Guinea court has announced that it will deliver a verdict on July 31st in the high-profile trial of ex-dictator Moussa Dadis Camara and 11 others. The charges stem from a brutal crackdown on an opposition rally in Conakry in September 2009. Camara and his co-defendants face accusations of murder, sexual violence, torture, abduction, and kidnapping. According to a UN-mandated commission, the crackdown resulted in at least 156 deaths, 109 rapes, and hundreds of injuries. However, the true figures are believed to be higher. Dadis Camara has denied responsibility, attributing the violence to subordinates acting independently, he says. The presiding judge announced the verdict's date after both the prosecution and defense concluded their arguments. Moving to Kenya now, where Kenyan President William Ruto has said that a bill containing contentious tax hikes would be withdrawn, dramatically reversing course after more than 20 people died and Parliament was ransacked by protesters opposed to the legislation. But the president warned that the withdrawal of the finance bill would mean a significant shortfall in funding for development programs designed to help farmers and school teachers, amongst others. This comes as the East African nation struggles to lower its foreign debt burden. Ruto's administration has been taken by surprise by the intensity of opposition to its tax hikes, with protests breaking out across the country last week. Now, to discuss this further, I'm being joined by Program Officer Siasa Place, Tele Nzomo. Tele, good morning. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Good. So, Tella, if you'll tell us, what is the situation on ground like as at the moment this morning with the withdrawal of the bill? Will it be enough to perhaps maybe placate protesters, or do you expect protests to continue?
Well, so far in this morning, some parts of the country have seen a little bit of protest. Nairobi, where the protests have been really at a maximum levels, has been more calm. We haven't seen any issue so far in Nairobi, though it's possible that some protesters could go to the streets today, considering what we were seeing yesterday on social media, is that some of the young people, although they're happy that the bill has been withdrawn, or that the bill is being withdrawn today, number one, feel as though they are still unhappy with the president. Maybe they don't completely trust the president. They may not, some even going as far as to suggest that Parliament might try and play some games so that they can find a way to pass the bill maybe in a month's time. So it's possible that we will see some protest today, though I do not expect it to get to the levels of Tuesday or what we saw last week.
You just said something, it might be a tactic to perhaps maybe eventually pass the bill, but do you think that this decision to withdraw is a willingness for them to maybe engage with critics or opposition parties? Or like you said, maybe this is just a distraction?
I think for now, the president and a lot of the members of parliament who voted for this bill were really stunned. I don't think they expected the level of protests that were seen. I think this is them reacting to really a moment in this country that no one really expected, no one was expecting to see. I think on their side, it has come about because of, I would assume, a lot of pressure. We saw pressure from, I think, the religious community to some extent. I assume that there was pressure from the international community, because the international community always gets involved whenever we have issues in Kenya. So I think it was more because of the pressure. I don't think that they were willing or they wanted to withdraw it. I don't think the president really wanted to withdraw it because he may look a little bit weak, but the pressure was too much. And for a lot of the politicians, I think they were worried that, they may not get re-elected next time, although I don't expect most of them to be re-elected. I think Kenyans right now and their constituents right now are very, very angry at them.
What's the level of public trust or public confidence in the president currently? And I mean President Ruto. Has this current events impacted his confidence level or the people's confidence level in him?
I think the trust in President Ruto the level of trust started to go down last year, starting with the Finance Bill 2023. That's the one that brought in things such as the housing tax, he was increasing NSSF, that's the amount of money we pay for Social Security. The cost of living had already started going up last year. And I think a lot of the Kenyans had started losing trust in him then. I think what we're just seeing now is that trust has completely plummeted. Kenyans are now looking at him as more of somebody who wanted to be a dictator. The fact that he was willing to try and have the military out in the streets, that's really, really unprecedented in this country, to have military coming to the streets just because of protesters. Yes, I know there were some issues here and there, but a lot of the issues are really instigated by the police. So I think a lot of the Kenyan people are seeing him as somebody who wanted to try and be a president like President Moi was. That's our second president, who was very much a dictator. And I think now people are looking at him in that mode.
There's a lot on President Ruto's table currently. Only just last month it was the issue of the medical doctors, and then this month it's the entire youth for Kenya. But there have also been calls due to these events for his resignation. Do you think that these demands will gain traction at all?
No, I think at some point they'll go down. I don't think William Ruto will resign. I think if people want to deal with William Ruto, I think they will have to wait until 2027 when we have our next election so that they can vote him out. I do think that, yes, on our online platforms, I think Kenyans will continue speaking about his resignation, but I don't expect the protests to go as far as actually getting William Ruto out of office at this particular moment in time. As I've said before, his level of trust is already low. The fact that we saw protests, not just the protests this time were interesting because we usually saw protests in opposition strongholds. This time we were seeing protests in areas that voted for William Ruto, including his own home area, which is Eldoret. And when you have that, when you see the people who voted for you going against you, I think it shows us that it will be a very, very tough, it will be a big challenge for him to get re-elected in 2027. But as far as him resigning, that is not something I expect. It's not something we usually see in Africa. And I don't think the protest in Kenya, I think, will reach the point where he has to resign.
Talon Zoma, thank you very much for joining us on the news this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And now a prominent Republic of Congo rights group, the Centre d'Action pour le Développement, CAD, has sounded the alarm over a dramatic rise in torture cases in the Central African country. According to a report released on Wednesday, documented cases of torture have surged nearly tenfold in the first 4 months of 2024 compared to the same period last year. The reports recorded 122 instances of torture from January to April 2024, a stark increase from the 13 cases reported during the same time frame in 2023. Figures for the latter part of 2023 were not included. CAD's executive director, Teso Nzela, described the findings as extremely worrying and called on the government to take immediate action to combat this practice. Established in 2021, CAD conducts and publishes annual surveys on the use of torture in the Republic of Congo, also known as Congo-Brazzaville. The country is a signatory to the UN Convention Against Torture. We're going on a short break now, but we'll be back with more. Business now. The domestic crude oil supply crisis marked by recent accusations of denials within the oil sector may lead to a significant decline in industry investments, operators warned on Wednesday. According to industry representatives from the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, LCCI, the crisis could erode the confidence of international oil companies and investors in refineries. In response to the crisis, the LCCI urged the federal government to swiftly address issues related to oil supply contracts, the high cost of crude oil in Nigeria compared to international prices, and logistical expenses. They emphasized the importance of preventing any form of blackmail or victimization of IOCs and local refineries to maintain stability and investor confidence in the sector. The warning comes on the heels of a fire outbreak at the 650,000 capacity Dangote Petroleum Refinery on Wednesday. And now sports. Nigeria's women's 4x400 meter team defeated Botswana and Zambia to win the gold at the Africa Senior Athletics Championship in Cameroon, but failed to pick up the relay ticket to the Paris 2024 Olympics, which will hold from July 26 to August 11, 2024. The quartet of Ella Onodrovevo, Patience Okon-George, Esther Elo-Joseph and Omolara Ogunmakinju ran a time of 3 minutes 27 seconds to win the women's 4x400 meter final, but was a second more of an Olympic qualifier time of 3 minutes 26 seconds needed to outplace Cuba on the World Athletics ranking and pick a ticket to the Paris Olympics. The women's 4x400 meter relay is the only relay Nigeria has failed to qualify for, having punched the other 4 tickets during the World Relays in the Bahamas in May. And FIFA has awarded Niger, a win and full 3 points in a 2026 World Cup qualifier with Congo that was postponed earlier this month. Congo refused to travel to Kinshasa for their home game after their stadium in Brazzaville was deemed not to have met hosting requirements. Niger traveled to honor the fixtures and were awarded the game 3-0, which leaves them second in Group E on 6 points behind, 3 points behind leader Morocco. Only the top teams in each of the 9 polls is guaranteed a place at the expanded World Cup in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. And Georgia made history and reached their first major tournament knockout stage with victory over Portugal at Euro 2024. Georgia, who are appearing at their first European Championship, had to record their first ever victory at the tournaments to reach the last 16 when they played Portugal in Glesenkirchen. Goals from Napoli winger Victor Karaksila and Jorge Mikauntadze ensured that Georgia earned their historic victory. The team, ranked 74th in the world, will now play Spain in the next round of Sunday in Cologne, having progressed as one of the 4 best third-placed sides. And that's all this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of the major stories. Nigeria governors assure labor of better remuneration as consultations for new minimum wage continues. And Guinean court to issue verdict on former dictator Daddy Camara's massacre trial on July 31st. Leading Congo rights group expressed concern over rise in torture cases. Remember now you can send your eyewitness report to WhatsApp number on your screen right now. And do remember to follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Mazino Appeal.